Hello students, welcome to my channel Learning History Made Easy. In today's video, we will be seeing about the Mauryan administration. Before getting into the video, if anyone is seeing the channel for the first time or if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe and share it with your friends. And also click the bell button to receive notifications whenever I upload new videos. So without wasting time, let us get into the video. So as I have told to you, today's video is about Mauryan administration. Okay. So regarding Mauryan administration, they had a very elaborate system of administration. So their administration was very elaborate. We know about this from the account of Megasthenes and Arthashastra-Kautilya. So as we know that the main sources regarding the Mauryas were Indica by Megasthenes, Arthashastra-Kautilya, etc. So we get an idea from the work of Megasthenes and also Arthashastra by Kautilya. All these works give information about the Mauryan administration. Now Megasthenes, he was a Greek ambassador. Okay, he was a Greek ambassador and he was sent by Seleucus. Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador sent by Seleucus and he was sent to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. And the major book written by Megasthenes was Indica. Indica was a book written by Megasthenes. This book throws valuable light on the administration, society, and the economy of Mauryan times, of Mauryas. So Indica is a main source which gives us information about the administration, society and economy of the Mauryas. And Indica was written by Megasthenes. Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador. He was sent by Seleucus to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. So this was one source from which we get information about Mauryan administration. Now the establishment of Mauryan Empire. Okay. Now the establishment of Mauryan Empire, if we see in contrast to the earlier smaller kingdoms, it ushered a new form of government. Compared to the earlier smaller kingdoms, the establishment of Mauryan Empire ushered in a new form of government, that is that of a centralized empire. Okay, so the Mauryan Empire ushered in a new form of centralized empire. A study of the Arthashastra in conjunction with the edicts provide information regarding this administration. So as we have already discussed, Arthashastra written by Kautilya was an important source, and the study of Arthashastra provides information regarding the administration structure. Now at the center of the structure, if we see the administration, at the center of the structure was the king, and he had the power to enact laws. So in the center of the structure, we can see the king who had the power to enact the laws. The king is called by Kautilya as Dharmapravartaka. King is called as Dharmapravartaka by Kautilya. Okay, so the king is called as Dharmapravartaka by Kautilya. Now after the king, there was a council of ministers. After king, there was council of ministers, or they were called as Mantri Parishad, and their duty was to advise the king. So first in the center, the king was there who had the power to enact the laws. Then the king was called as Dharmapravartaka. After the king, there was council of ministers or Mantri Parishad, and their duty was to advise the king. So that was the two structures in administration. The Mauryan king did not claim any divine origin. There was no claim of a divine origin by the Mauryan kings. Yet they attempted to emphasize the connection between kinship and divine power. The king was a fountain source of all governmental activity. If we see, the king was the fountain source of all governmental activities. All governmental activities, king was considered to be the fountain source. So that was the main power of the king in Mauryan administration. Now after the king, we will see in detail about the Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers, as we said, they were called as Mantri Parishad. Mantri Parishad. Their main duty was to advise the king. Okay, their main duty was to advise the king, and at times they must have acted as a political check. But the power of council were limited. Okay, this Council of Ministers or Mantri Parishad, their power was limited. Okay, they had limited power owing to the fact that it was a king who appointed the ministers. Why is it said that the power was limited? Because king appointed the ministers. King appointed the ministers. It was a king who appointed the ministers in the first instance. In Arthashastra, if we see Arthashastra written by Kautilya, lists the chief minister or Mahamantri. In Arthashastra, we can see about the chief minister. Chief minister is called as Mahamantri. Mahamantri, and also distinguishes between ministers and assembly of ministers. So in Arthashastra, we can see about the chief minister, that is Mahamantri, and also we can see about the difference between, okay, and we can also see the difference between ministers and assembly of ministers and assembly of ministers. That difference also is explained in the Arthashastra written by Kautilya. So, Council of Ministers or the Mantri Parishad, they advised the king. Their power was limited. Why? Because the ministers were appointed by the king. Now, Arthashastra tells about the chief minister or Mahamantri, and it also distinguishes between the ministers as well as the assembly of ministers. Now, if we see, it would seem that the ministerial council, that is Mantri Parishad, it would seem that the Mantri Parishad or the Council of Ministers together with Chief Minister, Mantri Parishad together with the Chief Minister or Mahamantri, they were selected to act as an inner council. Mantri Parishad plus the Chief Minister together, they were enacted to act as an inner council. Okay, they were selected to act as an inner council. Its important members included, so the members of these inner council included the Purohita, then Senapati, Mahamantri, and the Yuvaraja. So these were the members of the inner council. So Mantri Parishad together with the Mahamantri acted as an inner council. Its important members included Purohita, Senapati, Mahamantri as well as the Yuvaraja. So this was about the Council of Ministers. So in administration, first we learned about the king. After that, we learned about the Council of Ministers. Okay. Next, we are going to learn about the Amatyas. Okay. They were some sort of administrative personnel. So who were Amatyas? They were some sort of administrative personnel. personnel, or we can say that they were civil servants. Civil servants who filled the highest administrative and judicial appointments. So these Amatyas filled the highest administrative as well as judicial appointments. Highest administrative as well as judicial appointments. Appointments were filled by these Amatyas. Their role and functions were very important for all governmental work proceeded from them. See, now we considering Amatyas, all the governmental work proceeded from them. So this much is about Amatyas. They were some sort of administrative personnel or civil servants. They filled the highest administrative and judicial appointments, and their role was very important because all governmental work proceeded from them. So we finished the king, council of ministers, and next we learned about the Amatyas. Okay. Now next we are going to learn about the superintendent. Okay. The next personnel we are going to learn is the superintendent. They were also called as Adhyakshas. Adhyakshas. Superintendent or Adhyakshas. The central administration was conducted by a highly skilled superintendent. So they conducted the central administration. Central administration. So central administration was conducted by a highly skilled superintendent or Adhyaksha who looked after various departments. Their duty was they looked after various departments. Various departments were looked after by them. Kautilya in the second book of Arthashastra. So Kautilya in his second book of Arthashastra gives an account of the working of nearly 27 Adhyakshas. Okay, different departments were managed by them, and Kautilya in his Arthashastra, second book of Arthashastra, gives a list or an account of the working of almost 27 Adhyakshas. So that was given in the Arthashastra by Kautilya. And some examples regarding these Adhyaksha, that is Sitadhyaksha, that is superintendent of agriculture. Okay, he was a superintendent of agriculture of crown land or government agricultural farms. Basically dealing with agriculture was Sitadhyaksha. Then there was Navadhyaksha. He was a superintendent of ports, okay, who controlled traffic of waterways. That was Navadhyaksha, etc. So all these, there was a list of 27 Adhyakshas and they are working in Kautilya's second book of Arthashastra. So these were the points regarding the Adhyakshas or superintendents. So after Amatyas, we learned about Adhyakshas. Now let us just go through the points which we have studied till now. So regarding Mauryan administration, the Mauryas organized a very elaborate system of administration. We know about this from the account of Megasthenes and the Arthashastra of Kautilya. Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador sent by Seleucus to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. His book Indica throws valuable light on the administration, society and economy of Maurya times. The establishment of the Mauryan Empire, in contrast to the earlier smaller kingdoms, ushered in a new form of government, that of a centralized empire. A study of the Arthashastra in conjunction with the edicts provides the information regarding the administrative structure. At the center of the structure was a king who had the power to enact laws. The king is called by Kautilya as Dharmapravartaka. There was a council of ministers or Mantri Parishad to advise the king. The Mauryan king did not claim any divine origin, yet they attempted to emphasize the connection between kingship and divine power. The king was the fountain source of all governmental activity. Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers or Mantri Parishad advised the king and at times may have acted as a political check. But the power of the council were limited owing to the fact that it was the king who appointed the ministers in the first instance. The Arthashastra lists the chief minister or the Mahamantri and also distinguishes between the ministers and the assembly of ministers. It would seem that the ministerial council or Mantri Parishad together with the chief minister was selected to act as an inner council. Its important members included the Purohita, Senapati, Mahamantri and Yuvaraja. Amatyas. They were some sort of administrative personnel or civil servants who filled the highest administrative and judicial appointments. Their role and function were very important for all the governmental work proceeded from them. Superintendent or Adhyakshas. The central administration was conducted by a highly skilled superintendent or Adhyakshas who looked after various departments. Kautilya in the second book of his Arthashastra gives an account of the working of nearly 27 Adhyakshas. Example, Sitadhyaksha, superintendent of the agriculture of crown land or government agricultural farms. Navadhyaksha, superintendent of ports who control traffic by waterways, etc. Now let us move on to the next part, that is military and espionage department. Military and espionage department. Okay. Now considering the military and espionage department, the army during Mauryan times was often led by the king himself. Okay. The army was led by the king himself. It was only in the days of the last Mauryas that we find a Senapati overshadowing the king, okay, and transferring the allegiance of the troops to himself. During the time of the last Mauryan king, we see that Senapati was overshadowing the king, overshadowed the king only during the time of the last Mauryas. That time there was an instance of Senapati overshadowing the king and transferring the allegiance of the troops to himself. Now during the time of Chandragupta Maurya, if we see the army of Chandragupta Maurya, Chandragupta, according to Pliny, the army of Chandragupta included 6 lakh foot soldiers. 6 lakh foot soldiers were there in the army of Chandragupta Maurya. 30,000 cavalry were there. 30,000 cavalry and 9,000 elephants. 9,000 elephants and also chariots were also there. So this was how Pliny described the army of Chandragupta. According to Pliny, the army of Chandragupta included 6 lakh foot soldiers, 30,000 cavalry, 9,000 elephants besides the chariots. Now it was under the control of Senapati. So king was there. King was the leading. King led the army, and then Senapati was there. Senapati. It was under the control of Senapati, under whom there were several Adhyakshas. So under the Senapati, there were several Adhyakshas. Okay. So army was there. It was under the Senapati, and under him there were several Adhyakshas of different wings. Okay. Adhyakshas of different wings. So army's different wings were there, and Adhyakshas were there of different wings of army, and different wings of army such as infantry, cavalry, war elephants, navy, chariots, etc. So different wings of army included the infantry, cavalry, war elephants, navy, then chariots and armory. So these different units or wings were there. So it was under the control of Senapati. Army was under the control of Senapati, under whom there were several Adhyakshas of different wings and units such as of infantry, cavalry, war elephants, navy, chariots and army. And Kautilya classifies troops into different types. So in Kautilya's Arthashastra, okay, so if we see Kautilya's Arthashastra, Kautilya, he classifies the troops in army, classifies the troops in the army. He classifies it as hereditary ones, then hired troops, then troops supplied by forest tribes, troops supplied by forest tribes, and those furnished by the allies, troops by allies. All these were the different types of troops in the army. Hereditary troops were there, then hired troops were there who were hired from different places, then the troops which were provided by forest tribes were there, then there were some troops which were supplied by the allies. So like this, the troops were classified by Kautilya. Kautilya classified the troops. And again, Kautilya also talks about salaries of different ranks. He also talks about the salaries of different ranks of military commanders. Different rank commanders have different salaries. Megasthenes describes the administration of armed forces as comprising of 6 committees. Now, according to Megasthenes, so this much we learned what Kautilya said and Pliny said. Now, Megasthenes, according to him, he says that the armed forces administration comprised of 6 committees. Okay, 6 committees with 5 members each. According to Megasthenes, the armed forces administration consisted of 6 committees with 5 members each. Okay, so at the espionage department, he also said about the espionage department. The espionage department was manned by Guddhapurushas. Okay, Guddhapurushas, that means secret agents. So there was secret agents for the espionage departments, which was called as the Guddhapurushas. They were the secret agents, and they were under the control of Mahamatyapasarpa. Okay, these secret agents were under the control of Mahamatyapasarpa. Okay, they were under the control of Mahamatyapasarpa, both stationary and wandering. The secret agents were 2 types, both stationary secret agents were there, stationary as well as wandering. Okay, this was about the espionage department. The espionage department was manned by the Guddhapurushas, secret agents, under the control of Mahamatyapasarpa, both stationary and wandering. So this much we get an idea about their military and espionage department. Now let us move on to the revenue department of the Mauryas. Revenue department. The central administration was conducted through a number of officers, largely relating to the control of revenue. So the revenue department was under particular officer. Particular officer was there to take charge of the revenue department. Okay, so if we see the first officer, that is Sannidhata. The treasurer was responsible for the storage of royal treasure. Okay, he was responsible for the storage of the royal treasure and the state income, royal treasure as well as the state income, both in cash and kind. Okay, so once more I will tell, the central administration was conducted through a number of offices, largely relating to the control of revenue, and each under a particular officer. Sannidhata, the treasurer, was responsible for the storage of the royal treasure and the state income, both in cash and kind. So that was the first officer Sannidhata. Now if we see the next one, that is Samaharta. Samaharta, he was in charge of collection of revenue. Collection of revenue. So if we see Sannidhata, Sannidhata was in charge of the storage of royal treasure and state income. Now Samaharta, he was in charge of collection of revenue from different parts of the kingdom, and he looked after the income and expenditure, collection of revenue, and he also looked after the income and expenditure. Income and expenditure by supervising the work of the account general. This was done by supervising the work of account general. So Samaharta, he was in charge of collection of revenue from various parts of the kingdom, and he looked after the income and expenditure by supervising the work of the account general. Now the sources of revenue as listed in Arthashastra. So if we see the sources of revenue as listed in the Arthashastra, includes that of cities, land, mines, forest, roads, etc. All these were the sources of revenue as listed in Arthashastra. Now the person who was responsible to keep the accounts was the account general. The accounts general, he kept accounts. Okay, he kept accounts both of kingdom and royal household. He kept accounts of the kingdom as well as royal household. That was the work of the account general. He kept an account of the income of the kingdom as well as the royal household. Now this account general, he was assisted by a body of clerks. Assisted by body of clerks. There was a body of clerks to assist him, and they were called as Karmikas. They were helping the account general. The chief source of revenue was land tax. If we see the revenue, the chief source of revenue was land tax. Okay, and which was 1/6 to 1/4 of the produce. Okay, 1/6 to 1/4 of the produce. The land tax was collected 1/6 to 1/4 of the produce and was collected by a revenue officer. The second major source of income was toll tax. Other than land tax, another was the toll tax, which was imposed on all articles. Okay, all articles. Toll tax was imposed on all articles, except there were some things which were accepted, that is grain, cattle and a few other items. They were exempted. Other than that, toll tax was imposed on all articles. And two kinds of taxes were there. There were other two kinds of taxes. If you see the Ashokan edicts, there were two kinds of taxes, that is Bali and Bhaga. There were the two kinds of taxes, Bali and Bhaga. So if you see the accounts general, he was assisted by a body of clerks, and the revenue, main source of revenue was the land tax, which was 1/6 to 1/4 of the produce and was collected by a revenue officer. Then there was toll tax, which was imposed on all articles except grain, cattle and other items. Two kinds of taxes were explained in Ashokan edicts, that is Bali and Bhaga. These were the two kinds of taxes as said in the Ashokan edicts. So this much was the points regarding their revenue department. Now let us just go through the points which we have studied till now. Military and espionage department. The army was often led by the king himself. It was only in the days of the last Mauryas that we find a Senapati overshadowing the king and transferring the allegiance of the troops to himself. The army of Chandragupta, according to Pliny, included 6 lakh foot soldiers, 30,000 cavalry and 9,000 elephants besides chariots. It was under the control of the Senapati, under whom there were several Adhyakshas of different wings and units of the army. such as of infantry, cavalry, war elephants, navy, chariots and armory. Kautilya classifies troops into the hereditary ones, the hired troops, troops supplied by forest tribes and those furnished by the allies. Kautilya also talks about the salaries of different ranks of military commanders. Megasthenes describes the administration of the armed forces as comprising of 6 committees with 5 members each. The espionage department was manned by Guddhapurushas-secret agents under the control of Mahamatyapasarpa, both stationary and wandering. Revenue department. The central administration was conducted through a number of officers largely relating to the control of revenue and each under particular officer. Sannidhata, the treasurer, was responsible for the storage of royal treasure and of the state income both in cash and kind. Samaharta, he was in charge of collection of revenue from various parts of the kingdom and looked after the income and expenditure by supervising the work of the account general. Sources of revenue as listed in the Arthashastra includes that of cities, land mines, forests, roads, etc. The account general kept the accounts both of the kingdom and the royal household. He was assisted by a body of clerks, Karmikas. The chief source of revenue was the land tax, was 1/6 to 1/4 of the produce and was collected by the revenue officer. The second major source of income was toll tax, which was imposed on all articles except grain, cattle and a few other items. 2 kinds of taxes, bali and bhaga, are referred in the Ashokan edicts. Now let us move on to the judicial and police department. Judicial and police department. Okay. Now considering the judicial and police department, the main head of justice was king. Okay. The king was the head of justice and he was a fountainhead of law. Okay. He was also the fountainhead of law and all the matters of grave consequences were decided by him. So king was the head of justice. Now Kautilya, he refers to the existence of 2 kinds of courts. Okay. These 2 kinds of courts, one is Dharmasthiyas, that is dealing with civil matters, and the second kind of court is Kantakasodhana, that is dealing with criminal cases. So according to Arthashastra, Kautilya refers to 2 kinds of courts. One is Dharmasthya, dealing with civil matters, and Kantakasodhana, dealing with criminal cases. And there were special courts in cities and villages. Other than these, there were special courts. These special courts existed in cities as well as villages, presided over by Prateshika, Mahamatras and Rajuka. These special courts were presided over by, one is Pradeshika, then next is Mahamatras, and the third one was Rajukas. Okay, the special courts which was presided by Pradeshika, Mahamatra and Rajuka, these special courts existed in cities as well as villages. Now Kautilya mentions 4 sources of law. Okay, according to Kautilya, there are 4 sources of law. So which are the 4 sources of law? They are Dharma, that is sacred law, first one. Then the next one is vyavahara, which is the usage. Third one is the charitam, that is customs and precedence, that is charitam. And the fourth one is rajasasana, that is the royal proclamations. These were the 4 sources of law according to Kautilya. Dharma, the sacred law; vyavahara, usage; charitam, the customs and precedents; and the Rajasasana, which was the royal proclamations. These were the four sources of law mentioned by Kautilya. Now, if we see the officers who presided the special courts, the Pradeshikas were the principal police officers. Okay, the Pradeshikas were the principal police officers whose duty was to investigate the crimes. Their duty was to investigate the crimes. Duty was to investigate the crimes committed in the region within their jurisdiction. So that was Pradeshika. They were principal police officers whose duty was to investigate the crimes committed in the region of their jurisdiction. Now the police headquarters were found in all principal centers. There was police headquarters in all principal centers. And the jail, if you see, the proper Bandha Nagara, okay, if you see the jail, the proper Bandha Nagara was different from the police lockup. Police lockup was different. Police lockup was called as Charaka and the proper jail was called as Bandha Nagara. So that was about their judicial administration, that is police department as well as their judicial administration. So next we will move on to the provincial administration. So as we finish the central administration, next we will move on to the provincial administration. Apart from metropolitan areas which were directly governed, the empire was divided into 4 provinces. So if we see the empire, apart from the metropolitan areas, the empire was divided into 4 provinces, each under a prince or a member of royal family. Each province was under a prince or under the member of the royal family. Okay, each province was under prince or the member of royal family, that is Kumara or Aryaputra. Now these provinces were again subdivided into districts. Okay, empire was divided into 4 provinces. Provinces were subdivided into districts for the purpose of administration, and there was a group of officials in charge of the district. There were officials in charge of the districts. The 3 major officials of the provinces. So if we see the provinces, the 3 major officials were Pradeshika, Rajuka and Yukta. Okay, these 3 were the main officials of the provinces. The provinces had 3 major officials, that is Pradeshika, Rajuka and Yukta. Now if you see the first officer, the Pradeshika, was in charge of the overall administration of the district. Overall administration of district was taken care by the Pradeshika. He supervised the collection of revenue, maintaining law and order. All these things were done by him. That is, he supervised the collection of revenue, then he maintained law and order, maintaining law and order both in rural areas and towns within the districts. So all these were done by Pradeshika. So he was in charge of overall administration of the district, supervising the collection of revenue, maintaining law and order both in rural areas and in towns within the district. So that was done by the Pradeshika. Next, if we see the Rajuka, he was responsible for surveying and assessing the land. Surveying and assessing the land. That was the work of Rajuka, surveying and assessing the land. Next officer was the Yukta. He appears to have been subordinate officials. Okay, subordinate officials, and their duty were largely secretarial work. Okay, Yukta's main duty were secretarial work as well as accounting. Okay, so Rajuka whose main duty was to survey the land and assess the land. Yukta appear to have been subordinate officials whose duties were largely secretarial work and accounting. There was an intermediate level of administration. So in between there was an intermediate level of administration between the districts and that of village. Intermediate means between districts and village. Okay, so there was an intermediate level of administration between the districts as well as the village. The unit here formed by a group of 5 or 10 villages. So there was a group of 5 to 10 villages. Group of 5 to 10 villages, and there were two important officials concerned with the administration of these units, that is Gopa and Sthanika. Okay, so once more I will tell, there was an intermediate level of administration between the districts and villages. The unit here was formed by a group of 5 to 10 villages, and here two important officials were there, that is one is Gopa and one is Sthanika, who took care of this group of 5 to 10 villages. Now if we see Gopa worked as an accountant to that unit. Gopa worked as an accountant to that unit, and the tax was collected by Sthanika. Sthanika collected the tax. Tax was collected by the Sthanika. So Gopa was an accountant to that unit, and the tax was collected by Sthanika, who worked directly under Pradeshika. Sthanika worked directly under Pradeshika. We already have learned about Pradeshika, Rajuka and Yukta. So this Sthanika worked directly under the Pradeshika. Now if we see the smallest unit of administration, village was the smallest unit of administration. Okay, village was the smallest unit of administration, and to a great extent village enjoyed autonomy. Okay, and individual villages must have had their own set of officials who were directly responsible to the Gopas. We know that they had their own kind of autonomy, and they had their own set of officials who were responsible to the Gopa. Now if we see in village, the head of the village was called as Gramika. Head of the village was called as Gramika, who was assisted, this Gramika was assisted by gram-viddhas. Gram-viddhas, or these gram-viddhas are village elders. Okay, so the village was the smallest unit of administration. They enjoyed a great extent autonomy, and the head of the village was called as Gramika, who was assisted by gram-viddhas, that is the village elders. That was about the provincial and local administration. Now the last topic here is the municipal administration. Municipal administration. So regarding municipal administration, in Arthashastra there is a mention about Nagaraka, or city superintendent. City superintendent, who was responsible for the maintenance of law and order in the city. He was responsible for the maintenance of law and order in the city. So in Arthashastra there is a mention of Nagarika, that is city superintendent, who was responsible for the maintenance of law and order in the city. And this Nagarika was assisted by, two subordinate officers, that is Gopa and Sthanika. We already have learned about them. This Nagarika was assisted by two subordinate officers, that is Gopa and Sthanika. According to Megasthenes, the officials were divided into 6 committees. Here also it was divided into 6 committees of 5 members each, with a membership of 5. Okay, So this Nagarika was assisted by two officers, Gopa and Sthanika, and according to Megasthenes, the officials were divided into 6 committees, each with the membership of 5. So this much was regarding the municipal administration during the time of Mauryas. Now let us go through the points which we have studied. Judicial and police department. The king was the head of justice, the fountainhead of law, and all matters of grave consequences were decided by him. Kautilya refers to the existence of two kinds of courts, Dharmasthiyas dealing with civil matters and Kantakasodhana dealing with criminal cases. There were special courts in the cities and villages presided over by the Pradeshika, Mahamatra and Rajukas. Kautilya mentions about the 4 sources of law. They are Dharma, sacred law, vyavahara-usage, charitam-customs and precedents, and rajasasana-royal proclamations. The Pradeshika were the principal police officers whose duty was to investigate the crimes committed in the region within their jurisdiction. Police headquarters were found in all principal centers. The jail proper Bandhanagara was different from the police lockup called Charaka. Provincial and local administration. Apart from the metropolitan areas which was directly governed, the empire was divided into 4 provinces, each under a prince or member of royal family, Kumara and Aryaputra. Provinces were subdivided into districts for the purpose of administration, and groups of officials were in charge of the district. The 3 major officials of the provinces were the Pradeshika, Rajuka and Yukta. The Pradeshika was in charge of the overall administration of a district, supervising the collection of revenue and maintaining law and order both in rural areas and in the towns within district. The Rajuka was responsible for surveying and assessing land. The Yukta appear to have been subordinate officials whose duties were largely secretarial work and accounting. There were an intermediate level of administration between the district level and that of the village. The unit here was formed by a group of 5 or 10 villages. The 2 important officials concerned with the administration of this unit were the Gopa and the Sthanika. The Gopa worked as an accountant to the unit. The tax was collected by the Sthanika, who worked directly under the Pradeshika. Village was the smallest unit of administration and enjoyed autonomy to a great extent. Individual villages must have had their own set of officials who were directly responsible to the Gopas. The head of the village was called Gramika, who was assisted by gram-viddhas or village elders. Municipal administration. The Arthashastra mentions the Nagarika or city superintendent, who was responsible for the maintenance of law and order in the city. He was assisted by the subordinate officers Gopa and Sthanika. According to Megasthenes, the officials were divided into 6 committees, each with the membership of 5. So all these were the points regarding the administration of Mauryas. So I hope you have understood all the points very clearly. In case of any doubts, please feel free to ask in the comment section. And also don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Your likes and shares will be of a great encouragement for me to make more and more videos. So I hope to see you all soon in the coming video. Thank you for watching.